It's that time of the month again. Every single time I start a video out saying that, I don't know. Sit down videos have become kind of a hard thing for me to understand and comprehend how to do. Welcome to our May and June wrap up. It is one of my favorite reading times of the year. Summer reading is so nostalgic for me. So here we are to talk about all the books I read in May and June, which I had some really good books these past 2 months. I've been really satisfied with my reading. I feel like there's been a lot of good ratings. I also expect some good reading and ratings over the next 2 months. And I feel like those are definitely going to start with the books that I got from Book of the Month, who is kindly sponsoring this portion of today's video. So thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this iconic blue box. Every single time it shows up at my doorstep, I am just overjoyed. I've talked about Book of the Month so many times on my channel. I've read multiple Book of the Month books. I have found so many new authors on there. Some of the reads that we're going to be discussing in today's video I got from Book of the Month. They have the best price for new and release hardcover fiction this month. You guys can get your first book for just $9.99 with the code, guess what? Hot dog. With the code hot dog, you can get your first book for just $9.99. Book of the Month curates a list of selections for you to choose from each month, and if you don't like a book that's on the list that month, don't worry, you can skip it and you won't be charged. And each book is covered by their reader's guarantee. If a member purchases a book and you don't like it, they replace it for free in your next box. Your reading is always rewarded through their loyalty program. The savings start just after 3 boxes. I am so excited for both of my reads. First of all, we have The Summer Storm. This one I feel like is a perfect summer read. It's about a wealthy New England family, and those are the vibes that I'm going for in my reads this summer. And I'm also excited to pick up this one, which is Among Friends. I really enjoyed the synopsis of this one, so I'm very much looking forward to it. You guys can also check out the other selections that Book of the Month has. I'm going to have them linked down below. And again, I'm going to have all of the information down in the description. Get your first book for just $9.99 with the code HOTDOG. Thank you so much again to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video and supplying me with so many good reads and new authors on the shelves. I'm going to throw up on the screen our May and June analytics and statistics of what the reading looked like for those of you who love that information. I should really pull out the glasses for this one, I'm gonna be honest, because wow, this screen is kind of tiny. Starting off with our May read, first and foremost we have The Rose Bargain. Now this was one that I was very excited for. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. It is a young adult fantasy book. I should really come supplied with this information. You would not think that this is my job. I know that there is another book coming out. I cannot remember if it is going to be a duology or a trilogy. That is information that continues to leave my mind. But this one was a really fun read. It caught my eye a few months ago before the year even started because I'd come across the author's TikTok. The way that the author was promoting it was that Ivy by Taylor Swift on the Evermore album was a huge inspiration for this book and kind of the vibes of that. And I feel like if you know that song and you love that song and then going in and reading it, you can definitely tell like where we're drawing the inspiration from. It's actually very funny because now whenever I listen to Ivy by Taylor Swift, I think of The Rose Bargain. It was a very interesting mix of, I feel like, a few different books. I think what I had said was I personally, it reminded me of The Selection, a little bit of The Grace Year, a little bit of The Cruel Prince. I'm not saying that the book was like exactly like that. There are little things from each of those books that kind of tie back in that just reminded me of that. In this book, you are following our main character. She gets thrown into this competition where basically that specific year the prince is looking to be married. She's in a competition with a bunch of other girls to see who was going to marry this prince. It is a lot more than that, but that's kind of the basis of it. At the beginning, it was a little hard for me to get into this one. I was a little bored at the beginning. It quickly grasped me in, and there are quite a few quotes that I have pulled from the book and annotated that just really got me. I shall read you guys just a few of my favorite quotes. I remember everything. I remember everything so much. I am being crushed under the weight of it all. If I weren't so horribly defined by everything I've ever loved and lost, maybe I could be the kind of person who moves through life easily. I'm only 18, but I'm beginning to understand what my mother meant. What she said, remembering is heavy. It lasts so long. Lydia and I, always 2 sides of the same coin. Her hurt is spilled out onto the floor, messy in a way that demands it to be witnessed. Mine, shoved so deep down, my steps are heavier with the weight of it. There's There's a few other ones that I can't share because they are a little spoilery. That is another thing about this book, is that I feel like this author's writing was very enjoyable to me, and especially in the time of like this, like kind of when you're going to that spring summer transition, I am just personally somebody who finds it hard to really like dive into fantasies, even though we are literally about to talk about quite a few fantasies that I read. When I am reading them, I'm just able to more dive into more, I want to say, complex worlds kind of in the fall and winter time. Why does my brain work the way it does? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. But with this one, it was such an easy concept to grasp. The world was very easy to understand, and kind of like the lore, because there's also lore of, you know, things that went down and why things are ruled the way that they are. And the characters were very easy to follow. It was also very interesting because we would kind of switch point of views every once in a while, and it was interesting and insightful to get different point of views and kind of put the puzzle pieces together. By the end of the book, my jaw was on the floor, and I was like, I was genuinely perplexed and flabbergasted as to what was even happening. Not in a bad way, but in a like very entertaining, oh wait, this is starting to make sense type of way. And it made me very excited for the next book to come out. Next up, I wanted to read another Mhairi McFarlane book this year because just last night really caught me off guard last year when I had read it. So I wanted to pick up another one. I read through the synopsis of some of her backlist, and for some reason, Mad About You just really stuck out to me. I gave it a 3 stars because I could see the potential in other people enjoying this story. I feel like there were just certain things mentioned that really triggered me. That's one of the big things, is that one of the things that kind of goes down in this book, because basically you're following our main character. She is a wedding photographer. When you meet her, she's in this relationship, and then basically she's like, yeah, this relationship's not working. They break up, and then she moves into this house with this guy that she like finds an ad, or somebody tells her about the ad. So you have, honestly, in the story, multiple different things going on. You have our character dealing with some friendship things that is heavily talked about in this book, also relationship things with her ex-boyfriend, and then also a different ex-boyfriend that she's visiting, and then also what is going on with herself, and then also what is going on in the romance portion of this book, which I say romance because this is the second Mhairi McFarlane book that I've read, so I cannot attest to like her whole entire log of book. However, I feel like these are marketed as romance, but the romance definitely is not the strongest point whatsoever. I would even say it's the second strongest point in her book. As I've read them, it feels like it is very much an afterthought within the story. So I am just saying, don't go picking up these books expecting them to be very romance heavy, because I would say that they are not very romance heavy at all. Romance is almost kind of like a third act afterthought almost. One of the things that goes down in this book really triggered my anxiety, and it's just something that when things like this come up in books, it's just something that really triggers me in like a bad way. So I feel like that just did personally take me out of the experience. It's not even something very deep. It's just something that, like, when I sit and think about it, and then reading somebody going through things, that I'm just like it was not an enjoyable experience for me. So just personally, that kind of put me off the book a little bit, but that's not even the main contributing factor to kind of lower the rating. I enjoy Mhairi McFarlane's writing style. I do not find her character very emotionally deep, as in the connection with the reader. Like, I do not find a connection with a single one of her characters that I've read thus far. They're entertaining stories, and it's always very interesting kind of the things that are being talked about. And like I said, I really enjoy her writing style, and it was an entertaining story. Some of it felt so bland to me and a little bit boring. Like I said, then within the pacing of the story, when we're kind of dealing with so many other things the entire time, and then all of a sudden, this is why I use the term afterthought, because it feels like kind of like 75-80ish% through the book, the author's like, oh wait, yeah, there needs to be a romance. And so that also kind of throws off the pacing. It wasn't a bad book. I did enjoy it, and I enjoyed the story, but it wasn't my favorite. And I feel like I definitely still want to give some of their other books a try. If you guys have been following along with me, these next 3 books, we're just going to kind of talk about them all in one. I, last year, finally read the second and third book in the Mortal Instruments series. And if you've been following along with me for a while, you would know I read the first book in the Mortal Instruments like years ago, and then it took me multiple years to get to the next 2 books, and there's 6 books in that specific portion of the series. And the recommended reading order is to read the first 3 Mortal Instruments books, then to read the Infernal Devices trilogy, and then to go back and finish the Mortal Instruments. I need to get to the Infernal Devices at some point this year. Randomly, like I'm saying so randomly, I picked up Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess, which is the Infernal Devices trilogy, and I read all of them within a few days of each other, and I gave Clockwork Angel a 4 stars, and then I gave both Clockwork Prince and Clockwork Princess a 4.5 stars. These are also young adult fantasy. The way that I would describe these fantasies are they take place in the real world. So these take place in London. If you guys watched the reading vlog that I read these books in, I continuously forgot in that reading vlog as well what year these books take place in. But it takes place in this year, whereas the Mortal Instruments books take place in I think it's around 2008 in New York. They take place in the real world and they're all Shadowhunters. And so basically what Shadowhunters are they kill demons. It's this whole entire lore. You have to learn about them through the books, but that's kind of essentially what they do, these Shadowhunters. In these books, you're dealing with demons, vampires, werewolves, different magical, mythological creatures. I will say, the thing that really set the Infernal Devices apart were the characters and the connections. I said this in the reading vlog, so I don't want to necessarily sound like a broken record. With the Infernal Devices, I really expected them to be kind of almost 50-50 within the plot and the characters. However, I would probably, in my personal opinion, put the Infernal Devices as kind of 75 to 80-ish% character focused and then 20% plot. That may sound a little kind of, unbalanced. However, it's weird because within being so character focused, it also moves the plot forward. I'm kind of saying to differentiate it, there's very rarely times where we're just kind of focusing on plot versus not focusing on characters, if that makes any sense. A lot of the times we're spending with characters and then building relationships and kind of seeing how that works out. And I loved it. I loved these characters. I loved seeing different progressions and plot twists and different love and friendship that happened all throughout these, and also some different lore that you figure out, because it was interesting reading the first 3 Mortal Instruments books and then going back, because this is technically a prequel, and seeing some of the characters that you see in the Mortal Instruments and almost kind of getting a little bit of a backstory about them. This is something that helps with my personal rating to rate a book highly, is my personal connection and kind of emotional connection within the characters. This trilogy was able to do it. It made me so emotional. My heart was beating so fast. I was on the edge of my seat. I was sitting here oh my gosh. At one point, I was literally laying in bed reading next to Isaac, and he was what is going on? Because I was visibly freaking out. And the amount of times that I get that experience within a book of actually having a physical reaction is very slim, where I'm actually stressing out. That plays into the rating because it plays into your experience when reading the book. I adored these characters. I found the plot very interesting. I love kind of the different lore that we got into some of the other characters, and it did motivate me to want to go back into the Mortal Instruments series. Have I finished that series or even continued it? Nope, but I will. Don't you worry. Maybe by the end of the year, this is a little ambitious, we will have read the final 3 in the Mortal Instruments, and we can move on to Cassandra Clare's other works. Next up, I picked up Rewind It Back and gave this one a 4.25 stars. This is the very last book in the Windy City series, which is so heartbreaking because I would say this is my favorite sports romance series. Probably. I would put this as one of my favorites, definitely. With this one, I was excited because our male main character, you see him throughout every single book in all of the series, and he's kind of somebody that you're really waiting on to see what happens with him. I know it was a lot of people's most anticipated character story, and so I was just excited to see how this kind of played out, kind of learning what the trope is of this book, which is a second chance romance. So if you guys are into that, you guys could also potentially really enjoy this book. I'm indifferent to second chance romances. I enjoy them if they are done right. However, I feel I do get annoyed in second chance romances a lot, which did kind of happen a little bit in this book. The overall vibe of the book, I enjoyed. It had the overall vibe of all of the other Windy City series books. I feel this one definitely felt like a conclusive novel within the series. Is novel the right word? A conclusive story. This one definitely felt like very conclusive for like all of the characters and everything. Even within seeing the other characters in scenes and everything, it felt like we were kind of pushing the train to the end of the track, you know, like this was the end. It's also kind of hard a little bit in books like that to be the final book but also be the conclusion for everybody else's story. And you kind of have both of those things working in tandem, so that was also interesting to see, because it definitely felt like we were wrapping up all of the other characters, but we were also trying to focus on, you know, our main characters and their love story. I will say I did guess, because in second chance romances, there's always a reason. There's a reason for a breakup, for them, you know, like not talking or something that's kept them apart for years. And in this one, I definitely guessed it, like from the first time it was even hinted at. So I was just kind of always waiting for the other shoe to drop and for them to have a conversation about it, because my thing as well is that as adults, not saying everybody has the best communication all the time, but in books, it's always just so super painful where you see them start the conversation. Like they're both kind of, obviously because they both have the knowledge of what happened and they know, like, you know, what has kept them apart. So they'll kind of like bring it up almost like to make jabs at each other. But then they will walk the conversation backwards and they'll just be like, oh yeah, no, we're just not going to talk about it. And I, as a reader, am continuously frustrated by this, because it's like, why not just have the conversation? It kind of does, you know, ultimately tie into the whole entire like third act conflict thing. I hate the third act conflict. I hate it. I know, I've said it all the time, the plot roller coaster. I get it, okay? That does not mean that I am not continuously annoyed by it, because it just feels very formulaic and I'm like, come on guys, it's making these stories so predictable. With that being said, what I didn't love was just the miscommunication, and it felt like just kind of the little immaturity things that were going on with them. But what I did really enjoy was their romantic tension. I just loved our male main character in the book. Okay, I feel like he had quite a few quotes where I was like, okay, I was not aware of your game, but I am now aware of it. I didn't love our FMC. She wasn't super memorable to me. Like, I definitely, if anybody cares, Caught Up is literally my favorite book in the whole entire series that we have. I loved both our FMC and MMC in that book, but our FMC was very memorable to me. Same thing with The Right Move as well. I would say those two are kind of like my ultimate favorite. I will say every other FMC was a lot more memorable than this one, but it also was hard because in this book we were really focusing on our male main character. He was the character that was everybody was waiting to get built up, so I feel like maybe that's why there's kind of that imbalance there. But I still really enjoyed this book. 4.25. I'm so sad the series is over. However, we're kind of starting, it's like a, would you call it a spin-off series? It takes place in the same world, but it's not following like the same group of people whatsoever. Excited for that regardless. Okay, next up we have One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. This one I gave a 4.5 stars, which was extremely unexpected for me, because this was a book that even when it was announced, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna read it. Like, I was fully like, yeah, I'm not gonna read it. I guess I have Bestie Sarah to thank, because she is the entire reason that I read this book, and I loved it. It's my favorite Carly Fortune book, which I'm not a huge Carly Fortune book fan, but with One Golden Summer, she really changed that for me. The characters just felt so real and lovable to me, and also I loved the setting, but I loved the chemistry and the story that unravels with our two, you know, main characters. Our FMC, I loved her and just her story by herself and what was going on with her. For a little bit of context, One Golden Summer, the MMC in this book, you see him in Every Summer After. He's a pretty big part of Every Summer After, so I would recommend you read Every Summer After before picking up One Golden Summer if you haven't read them yet. You don't absolutely need to. I would recommend it because it makes going into One Golden Summer kind of feel like you're coming back to like something you already know, because you get more backstory on like the town itself and kind of some even different like history aspects that have to do with the MMC that I feel like we didn't go deep into in this book, which I appreciated as somebody who's read Every Summer After already. Like, you already know this information because you explore it deeper in Every Summer After, so you didn't have to go into it in One Golden Summer. Basically, he is a big part of that. So you see him in this book and he just feels like a completely different character. And I was blown away. I mean, from the first interaction that these two have on page, I was like, oh my, am I swooning right now? Like, what is going on? I was fully in it, like from the first interaction. But also our FMC, she got me from the very start as well, because just her character, the different attributes that she brought to the table. She's a photographer, so also the image that we kind of get painted to put into our heads of the way she approaches her career and her life and different family aspects and kind of how that all plays into each other. She goes to this lake house at this lake for the summer with her grandmother, and she has spent one summer there with her grandmother before, and basically almost kind of the catalyst for her entire photography career was this photograph that is like her favorite photograph that she's ever taken, and she took that summer of these 3 teenagers on this yellow boat. And unknowingly, it was like the 3 characters from Every Summer After. So she obviously runs into our MMC, who was one of the people on the boat, who she is sparking this romance with. And just the way that he is integrated into her life and the way that they banter back and forth with each other and their chemistry and their tension, it was so well done. Like, I absolutely loved it. So it was a 4.5 stars. I feel like it was one of the best summer romances that I have read thus far. Next up, one of my most anticipated releases of the year, It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan. At first, I was a little caught off guard. So basically what this book is about is our FMC used to be on this very like popular kids show. She was a child actress, and so she is now grown up and she's no longer in that portion of the career, but now she basically tries to get movies greenlit. She really wants this one project to work, and she's very desperate, so she tells the people at the studio, I worked with this guy back in the day and I think I can get him to write an original song for the movie. So she has to go down this rabbit hole and kind of follow this guy and find him, and he's playing at this music festival that happens to be in the same town that a man that she works with lives in. So she goes to this town with this guy that she cannot stand, that she works with, and they're both basically trying to get to this guy to get him to write a song for the movie. And that plot is a little confusing. I made so many jokes before the book came out that I was like, I don't really understand. Like, when you read the synopsis, it's a little bit confusing, and even me trying to explain it, I still feel like it's a little cloudy. But this was so unexpected for me at first, and I feel like, unfortunately, this did catch me off guard, so it kind of made the reading experience kind of almost like a little, I was confused for the first, like, 80 pages, because I said this in the reading vlog that I read this book in. I feel like authors have a specific voice. Like, when you pick up an Ali Hazelwood book, when you pick up an Emily Henry, when you pick up a Abby Jimenez book, there's a very specific voice that these authors have within their writing. So you can always kind of tell if something feels just a little bit different. With this one, it just did not feel, at the start of the book, it did not feel like an Annabelle Monaghan book at all. So I was a little like off balance, I want to say, a little bit going into the reading experience, because 1, I was confused as to what was really going on. 2, the voice felt a little off. But then once we got going, it felt like an Annabelle Monaghan book again, and I just absolutely adore every single one of her books. I love the characters and the journey that they go on, because romance is a big part of her book, but also kind of this form of self-exploration and self-discovery always takes place within our female main characters, which I just really enjoy, and it always kind of flows into the romance. So with Annabelle Monaghan is able to flow that plot into the romance, I absolutely love. And she did it once again in this book. I will say another thing that kind of the writing down a little bit for me was the way that our female main character kind of does something to the romance at one point that I was just like, why are we doing this? We're doing this for no reason, for, you guessed it, everybody, a 3rd act conflict. There are some other things that kind of start to unravel within that you kind of come to the understanding that, hey, maybe A needed to happen so B could happen, so then C could happen. I've said this before, and I think I said it recently, but in my favorite books, there is a little piece of them that I break off and kind of take with me and tuck into my heart that I just always reference or talk about or have applied to my everyday life. And with this one, I also took it out, was like, love happens over breakfast. There's like this whole entire little monologue about that quote. And with, if you guys have heard me say before, Annabelle Monaghan's other book, Summer Romance, that is one of my favorite books of all time. Spring is always coming and I'll always have a dog. That is another thing that, if you've read that book, if you know, you know. It's a Love Story had that same quality to it, where I was taking little pieces of it out, but also just some a talent that Annabelle Monaghan has is to really insert yourself into these characters' lives, but also kind of relate it back to your life, even if it's not necessarily the most like, oh yes, my family also does that, but it gets you thinking of things kind of surrounding that. And I love the way she writes love and people falling in love, and the descriptions, even just down to like body movements or just like different, you know, like postures or looks or different feelings and emotions. I feel like that's one of my favorite things about Annabelle Monaghan and her books, but specifically how she writes romance in her books. I love that. I love the way she captures falling in love. I feel like it's a very realistic way that if you have been there before, it's a very warm feeling to kind of revisit. I love Annabelle Monaghan's books. It's a Love Story was no different. Absolutely adored it. Next up, I read Ali Hazelwood's new release, which was Problematic Summer Romance, which I gave it 3 stars. This one is a fun summer read. That's exactly what I would put it as. Our FMC lives in Austin. She basically goes out of country because her brother is getting married. One of her brother's really like close friends, they kind of have a little bit of history together, but there's a lot of tension because it didn't like end the best. So you're kind of following that storyline of them, you know, being here for the wedding and the little shenanigans that are going on with the wedding, the tension that is happening between these two characters, all of that. I gave it 3 stars because I thought the scenery was beautiful. I loved the cast of characters. I thought they were fun. Ali Hazelwood, again, has such a specific voice within her writing that I feel like her books are just a fun time. Like, taking Bride out of the equation, I really could not see myself rating any of Ali Hazelwood's books below a 3 stars because I feel like they're all so fun and they have her specific voice to them, and I just really enjoy them. The way that she writes her characters and just kind of like the nature of their conversations, I just find intriguing. And so with this one, it was just very enjoyable for me. I feel like age gap, it was just mentioned way too many times. I did say there were a few conversations that I felt like were important for the 2 main characters to have, you know, like revolving around the different aspects of having an age gap relationship. However, they had these conversations, and the same exact conversation multiple times, where they both kind of, you know, like discuss these things. It's like the only thing they would ever say to each other. Like they would like cross paths and then they would be like, you're too young for me. It was just so much. The age gap, it was basically all they talked about in their relationship. It felt like nothing else was ever really discussed other than just their age difference. And that purely, it took me out of the book and it took me out of the couple itself. I still had a really good time reading the book and I had an enjoyable time, and I think it's a fun summer romance. I feel like if you like age gap romances, you would really like it. I'm kind of indifferent to age gaps. I don't really lean towards them. I didn't love it. It's definitely not my favorite Ali Hazelwood book. However, it was enjoyable. Next up, we are going into some June reads. First and foremost, we have The Love Haters by Catherine Center. I gave this one a 2.5 stars. I also read this in a reading vlog that I think I just uploaded, so you guys can see me read this one. I think it's my last video. In this one, you're following our FMC, and she basically works for this company, and she is tasked to go down to like the Florida Keys. She has to film a video for, what branch of the military is it? That's escaping me. So basically she goes down to film this video as a promotional thing, and she meets this guy that she is supposed to be, you know, like filming the video of. I loved the setting of the book. I loved the quirky, fun things that we talked about in this book. Also just the community that she's like thrown into as soon as she gets in there. That was so much fun to me. Like I loved all of the little quirky things that were happening in the book. However, the romance was a mess. The guy I did not like at all. Also, we kind of get thrown this other thing that starts happening towards the end of the book that was just so confusing, and then something else happens. But usually Catherine Center does this in her books, where kind of towards the end of the book she like throws this like crazy like kind of plot twist type of thing that happens, and you're just like, what is going on? So I was reading that, and reading that also kind of really ruined the MMC for me. They were not a good couple, and I could not buy into it at all. And there were just like conversations and actions that happened that I was like, are we gonna address this? And it was like, kinda, but not really. And then I was like, okay, like I'm supposed to, these are the people that I'm rooting for. I don't see it. Yeah, this one, it was fun, but I really was more frustrated than anything else, but I also had fun. Next up, we have My Friends by Frederick Bachman, which I ended up giving a 4 stars. This story's a little bit hard to explain. Basically, there is this famous painting of these friends, and you kind of are just learning the backstory of this painting told via 2 different characters. But it's not really 2 different characters, because sometimes you go into other people's point of views, but you're really just following these 2 characters. And if you've read a Frederick Bachman book, you would kind of understand what that means, because he does kind of play with point of view where there's a lot of them, but not in an overwhelming sense, at least not to me. And this one felt like a perfect kind of summer literary read, where it's a tale of friendship and love and what happens in things like that, especially childhood friends, and also just in what different stories and different environments and the connection that brings. There are so many different quotes and everything. Again, I read it in the same reading blog that I previously mentioned that I share that are just so hard hitting, and it just had Frederick Bachman's, true voice to it, as all of his other books do. With all of Frederick Bachman's other books, however, usually I don't care about whose point of view we're in, and what I mean by that is I'm entertained no matter whose point of view we're in. I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter if we're flip-flopping point of views, I'm good with either of them. However, with My Friends, I felt a little bit of that, I don't really, there was one point of view and one character that I understood their role in the story, absolutely, but I just really did not care for it that much. But it did add to the story, but I just liked the other point of view and the other story that was going on way better. It brought out so many emotions. It was anger, sadness, fear, all of these just heartbreaking things, and how friendship is just at the root of it, and the power of friendship, especially the power of friendship at such a young age, and kind of that innocence and love and strength that are the walls surrounding a friendship at its core, and what different people can bring into your life, and kind of different life circumstances and what is happening. And it was just such a heartwarming and touching story, and I'm a sucker for books about friendship, so this one was definitely one of my favorites. Next up, we have Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I gave a 4.5 stars. I adored this book. In this book, you're following our female main character, and it is the 80s, and basically you are following her working at NASA and being an astronaut. It has so many layers to it itself, one being a woman in that workforce in that time in life, but also there are so many different things at play. It is a love story, and I absolutely loved it. If you guys, again, watched the reading vlog that I read this book in, watching me finish this book, I watched that clip back so many times because it was genuinely a roller coaster of emotions. I was all over the place. My heart was beating out of my chest. It's again a book that I just felt so strongly emotionally connected to, but specifically our female main character. Her character and the things that she does for others continuously throughout the book. She is just one of my favorite characters because of just her actions and what she does and what she thinks and what she chooses to do, and just her way of thinking. I absolutely loved her. She was such a strong female main character to me. I loved the love story in this one. It was so heart-wrenching and heartwarming and pure and just loving, and I loved that story as well. You also have this other storyline that's going on where it's almost kind of a then and now, where you're kind of getting the build up to the backstory of what's happening at the present day very moment. And just, this book is so heart-wrenching. I'm just thinking back on the details of it, and I'm just I can't. It is such a special book, just the different connections and different people, different personality types that you see within different characters, and the layers of that, again, friendship, love, also family relationships, and kind of what goes into that. There was just so many layers to this story that I enjoyed all of them. It was such a good read. Next up, I picked up You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. I gave this one a 2.5 stars. This one, it was such a fast, enjoyable, entertaining read. I loved the vibes of it. It was kind of giving slasher, summer camp vibe. The way that the book, the actual plot of the thrilling aspect of the book lost me so bad. I felt like it made no sense as to what was even going on. Thrilling nature of a villain in books like this, I was just wait, what? I was reading it, and I was going back and rereading it, and I didn't really understand it just didn't feel like it flowed very well in the story. It felt like we kind of, I don't know. I enjoyed the overall vibe of the book though. I thought that it was a very fast, fun, and easy read, and I was looking for that exact kind of like summer-ween vibe, and so it gave me that. However, I have not thought about this book since I have finished it. But I do want to read, I think there's another book that this author just put out that I do want to read. I forget what it is called, but it is on my list of books to read this summer. Next up, I have Sounds Like Love, which I ended up giving it 4 stars. This one, again, I love Ashley Pawson's book. I love how she adds magical realism into her romances, and it just makes the romances feel so magical. And with this one, I really loved it because our FMC, basically, she is a songwriter. She is living in LA. She has to go back home to kind of help out with her family for, I think it's like a month, around a month, somewhere around that time period, and she goes back to this beach town in the Carolinas. I forget, is it North Carolina? Basically, before she leaves, she has this like altercation with this guy, and it's not the best altercation, and then basically she starts hearing this voice in her head. They kind of end up going down this road of like they hear the same melody in their head and they make a song together. And in this book as well, this book kind of reminded me of It's a Love Story. I don't know why. I just kept drawing kind of the same inspiration from the two of them, and I really enjoyed both of them. But I love books that surround kind of like musical people and bookish people, so this one I really loved as well, of like the different like the romance that kind of goes into writing a song and like falling in love with somebody, and kind of the soundtrack that people paint, you know, falling in love with, because people use music for so many different things in life, but falling in love is definitely, I feel like, the number one thing that we are using music for. I really enjoyed, even maybe a little bit more than the like falling in love, was our FMC storyline with her family and kind of her own self-exploration. I also loved The Revelry. The Revelry is the music hall that her parents have owned her whole entire life, and that just felt like a magical element within the story itself. Oh, I loved the setting, and also they had like a few moments at the beach. I think she like refers to him as kind of like an uncle, but he like has this like floating bar on the ocean where he makes these like crazy margaritas, like little things like that in the book that just made it so special and heartwarming and really pulled you in. It was such a cozy summer book. Like I don't know how else to describe it. Next up, this is a book I have been aware of since 2020, and I have not read it, and I finally picked it up, and that is House on the Cerulean Sea, which I gave a 4.25 stars. This book is like a cozy fantasy where basically you have our main character, and he works for kind of like this form of government of protecting these like magical children in these homes. So he basically is tasked to go to this house and make sure everything is running smoothly. And he gets to this house and he is just met with a whirlwind of emotions. And this book is genuinely one of the most heartwarming, loving books that I have ever read in my life. Like, I was shedding tears of just pure joy and happiness. The vibes of this book are some of the best vibes that I've, like, all of the kids are just so distinctly themselves and different in what they bring to the story, but just the wholesome nature around the children character itself and kind of what that brings into the story and how that also affects our main character. There's also a love story, and then there's also like standing up for what you believe in. Like, it is just such all around like the best vibes of a story, and I just ate it up. It was so heartwarming, and I didn't want it to end. It was just such a good reading experience, and it was so cozy. Like, I would like snuggle up at night and read it, and it was just like reading the kids and like what they were saying and how they were interacting with our main character or interacting with each other, and just again that wholesome nature of children. I feel like that it captured in this book. Even though they're magical children, it was just so sweet. The last book that I ended up reading in June was One Italian Summer. I gave this book a 2.5 stars. I read some of it and then audiobooked some of it because I was listening to it while driving on a road trip, and Lauren Graham actually narrates this audiobook. I loved listening to her. I could listen to her narrate literally anything, and it also felt like an appropriate book for her to narrate, so I would recommend the audiobook of this one. You have our main character, and she has just recently suffered the loss of her mother, and she kind of just feels like her life is just this, you know, like she doesn't really know what is going on. And her mom had both booked this trip to go over, like to have this Italian summer together, because her mom had this Italian summer that she had told her about her whole entire life, and they were going to kind of experience this together. They made plans for what to do, but then her mother passed away. She decides to go do this trip alone. While she is there, she runs into her mother at 30 years old and basically spends this week of time with her mother at 30. Here's where some of my problems started to arise. One, I did not like our main character that much and her actions, and also how she kind of excuses those actions and they are just not really brought up. I didn't love the way that she treats her husband and the way she treats her marriage and that kind of thing that was going on. I didn't love. Also, even kind of some, like, just some of the things surrounding her mother and the way that she was just a little hard for me to read a little bit. But also because the whole entire time travel aspect is just kind of not even, it's like, how is she seeing her mom? That was a little messy to me. And again, it was hard to root for our main character because some of the things that happen in this book, it's just a little hard to root for the motivations behind it. Taking that away though, I still thought it was an enjoyable read. I loved the descriptions around where she was at and her travels, and it just made you feel like you were there. Like, I swear I could feel the sun on my body. And I was driving in a car in 90-degree heat. So yeah, I could just have potentially been feeling the actual literal physical sun. But you guys know what I mean. Like, I felt like I was on a boat in Italy. Like, it just felt very atmospheric. I loved the audiobook. Honestly, I feel like I potentially could have loved this book even more if I would have just audiobooked the whole entire thing. I did enjoy our conversations around, even though they were hard for me to read because I talked about it. I don't think the reading vlog's out yet, but I did read this in a reading vlog, and I talked about how I have a real issue with anticipatory grief and how I struggle with that. So it's a little scary and daunting for me to like read about things like this, but the way that the author was able to put into words talking about a loss as big as that and kind of how empty you feel and like you feel like a piece of you is missing, I was like, wow, that is just such a strong, you know, there were parts of that where it was just very, very hard hitting. So I did enjoy all of that. But like I said, when you are reading a book and you don't really like the main character or the motivations behind what she's doing, it's kind of hard to be like in it. Okay, everybody, those are all of the books that I read in both May and June. I hope you guys found some new reads. There's a lot of summer reads. Listen, we still got like 2 months of summer to go, so pick some of these up before summer's over, or just pick them up regardless. You can really read whenever you want. There are no rules. Read whatever you want whenever you want. I'm going to link down below all of the reading vlogs that I've read all of these books in case you guys want to see me kind of. I always dive a little bit deeper into those because one, it's like my first impressions, it's my fresh thoughts. So go check those out if you guys want to check out the reading vlogs that I read those in. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I love you guys so much and I appreciate you even more. With all of that being said, I will see you guys when I see ya. Peace.